Listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 239. Today's podcast is brought to you by hititboard.com. Hititboard.com has the innovative training tools you need for agility. Having problems with the dog walker A-frame? The Hititboard can fix that. Your dog doesn't like tugging? They'll love the Tug It. Can't move your A-frame around by yourself? The Move It can. Go to hititboard.com and use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's hititboard.com. Today's podcast is also brought to you by 1TDC.com. Dog agility can be hard on your dog's body. Help keep their joints and muscles healthy with 1TDC. 1-tetradecanol complex is a clinically studied blend of unique fatty acid oils that can support your dog's joint health. 1TDC promotes a healthy inflammatory response from head to tail. All of our listeners will automatically qualify for a great 1TDC special offer by purchasing online at BDA1TDC.com. That's BDA, the number 1TDC.com. Today, Jennifer and I are going to be talking about how to choose the right venue in agility. And this is going to be pretty specific to the United States because that's where both of us live. Some of these factors you could probably apply to other places, but we're going to be looking at the major organizations in the United States. And this idea came to us from one of our listeners who was wondering how we would recommend beginners prepare to compete for the first time and how they decide which venue to compete in. She said that she's talked to people who started in one, but then they weren't sure that they would have done it the same way if they were starting again now. And so we'll talk a little bit specifically about debuting, but we're also going to talk about the organizations in general. And the ones that we're going to talk specifically about are going to be the American Kennel Club, AKC, the United States Dog Agility Association, USDAA, CPE. I don't even know what that stands for. Do you know what that stands for, Jennifer?
Yes, Canine Performance Events.
All right. That's one that I don't have around here, which is a sneak peek at one of our reasons for why you might or not do a venue. So CPE, NADAC, North American Dog Agility Council, and which is NADAC, and UKI, which is UK International. And there are a few other organizations, but those I think are the five major ones that we see the most of here in the United States. And I think that the absolute biggest number one factor when you're trying to decide what venue you want to compete in my opinion, is going to be geography. It's going to be what is available within a reasonable distance for you. And that's going to dictate a lot of your options. So where I live, which is the Houston, Texas area, we pretty much have a lot of AKC, some USDAA, and little to none CPE, NADAC, a very few number of UKI trials. But that's what we have available to us. What is it like up in where you are in Ohio?
Yeah, up in Ohio, we're in the Midwest here, and we are very similar in that the predominant organization that we have is AKC. We have a lot of AKC clubs in each city. Each one's holding multiple shows. Pretty easy access. I can go 2 hours north and hit a bunch of trials in Cleveland, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours kind of south or west over to Dayton or Cincinnati, and then all the ones here in Columbus. So AKC is going to be the predominant one. I would say second in line to that, we have CPE. We have some really great CPE clubs that are really predominant in putting on a lot of shows. And then we do have some USDA and UKI. Now, lately, USDAA has kind of been slipping and dropping in their interest and their numbers. So we're starting to see a little less USDA, and those same people that were holding those trials increase their number of UKI. So we're seeing some UKI become more popular and USDA drop. We have no NADAC. I could not tell you any local clubs that I am aware of or organizations that I am aware of in the central Ohio area that offer NADAC, which is interesting because they actually held the 2019 NADAC Nationals in Ohio. And I was shocked when I found that out because I don't know anywhere around here, not even just in Ohio, but kind of in the Midwest. Now, that doesn't mean it's not offered, but I'm pretty aware of what different clubs are doing, and we don't have a lot here. So Ohio is a great location, and maybe that's why they brought their nationals in. But that is not an organization that I am familiar with, and would be one that would be really hard for me to access if I wanted to choose that venue.
All right. So geography is our number one consideration. I think similar to geography, slightly different, I think is community. I think that agility is a very social sport. For the majority of people, you are going to go to your trial, not just to compete with your dog, but also to be around friends and training partners and people from your weekly class. And so what those people choose to compete in also heavily influences what you're going to do. And it has more to do with how much fun you have at the trial than it does with the organization itself. So I think that when you show up at a trial, there are a certain group of people that are going to be very, very competitive, and it doesn't matter to them as much what the community is like. But for a lot of people, if you show up at a trial and you don't know anybody, you just don't have as much fun, even if your dog does well and even if the courses are great, as you do when you go to a trial where you have a lot of friends there. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. So I think that that's another big factor.
This one is one that I know I'm really guilty of. I like to kind of round up my friends or my students when I see a new show or a very unique show I want to go to. And I try to recruit everyone to go. And if I get a bunch of people, yeah, let's all go to this show. It just makes it more fun. We can go to dinner together or whatever. Or if there's a show I'm really interested in, I can't find anybody that's going, I'm less inclined to go. And I know, there's a lot of different factors for everyone. I know one that has really, really influenced me in the last 5 years. And granted, this is very unique to most of the people that are probably listening to this, is when I had Ethan. So when I had kids, and kid, singular, it really affected what I was doing. So the geography and the community became a factor, because now that I was traveling with a toddler, I'm not going to be as willing to go as far because it's putting him in a car and occupying him. And I would ask around to shows if there was going to be somebody there that could help watch him while I ran. Did I have somebody that could kind of keep an eye on him, or, friends or students that could help kind of babysit while I was running a dog. So everybody might have individual factors like that. I know not a lot of people, it's the case of the kids, but maybe whether or not they do or don't want to go to a hotel. I know some students have dogs that don't handle hotels really well. They stress or they get anxiety with it. So they will choose shows that don't require hotels. And for some people, it's even the financial part. They want to try to stay close to home and save on money that way. So I'm one that's often trying to recruit some friends to go with me to local shows because, like you said, it is more fun, that community aspect to things. And I think along that same line, some handlers will choose different shows based on maybe the one their instructor or their coach is going to, particularly in the case of a debut. All right, maybe you're novice A and it really is your agility debut, not just that dog's. I do encourage people to debut at a show that I can be there and I can help them. I can look at the course map, or I can, coach them, talk to them about things, review some rules. I don't think it would be a great idea for a novice A person to go to a show where they have, no instructor, no guidance, or nobody from their class in, because that can be a huge, moral support, but also just simple little questions or simple little reminders that give them that extra bit of confidence and success in the ring.
Right. And I think something similar to having like your coach available is also, and again, something else that has nothing to do with the venue per se, is the environment that show is being held in. So when you're taking, especially, let's talk specifically about debut. When you're having your dog's debut, a one ring trial is fantastic, right? You don't really care if that one ring trial is AKC or USDAA, right? If you see a one ring trial and it's around the time that you're starting to think that your dog might be ready, that's a great opportunity for debut. It just cuts down on the number of distractions for your dog and really sets them up for success. I think, for people that are lucky enough to train in the same facilities that also hold trials, being able to have a debut basically on your home turf is a huge advantage in terms of setting your dog up to succeed. And then while we're talking about debuts, I think that there are organizations that have really favorable rules for debut. And we're actually seeing this be a lot more common now. We've had a recent podcast about the AKC adding for exhibition only and fix and go options. I'll put a link to that podcast. But basically, there is some allowance for some amount of training in the ring now in AKC. USDA added this, I think last year or not too long ago. They added a miscellaneous training class where you could take toys into the ring and possibly treats. UKI has a for exhibition type of mode where you can take toys into the ring and sometimes treats, depending on the trial. I believe you said CPE allows for this as well.
Yes, CPE has this option as well.
So now I think in the past, if there was only, if UKI was the only one that allowed it, I think that would be a huge advantage to debuting in UKI over some of the others. But now that this option is more widely available, I would say whatever organization you choose, utilize those programs, because it is a huge benefit to a young or an inexperienced dog to have that kind of gradual exposure to the kind of pressure and lack of reinforcement that we have in a true trial environment.
Yeah, when we decided to do the podcast on this topic, or when this question came in and we discussed it, I thought that this was a great topic and a great podcast following the last couple weeks we've been discussing about these changes with FEO and fix and go, because I really do think that the changes that AKC made not only are great for AKC, but I do think it's going to possibly pull a little bit more people over to AKC, not only just for their debut, but for more long-term showing as well. So I feel like kind of this discussion of debuting, but also what organization do I compete in, nicely follows up some of our recent discussions about the changes we're seeing in AKC. Now, some of those changes, as you just mentioned, some of the other organizations have had, and now we're seeing that more equally across the board.
Exactly. And I think that the other thing that I want to make very, very clear is that, where you start largely doesn't matter. You can go from organization to organization. You can compete in multiple organizations. I do think that it's hard to do everything. And we've had a podcast before that I will just admit that it is one of my favorite of my own podcasts. It's called Choose Your Own Agility Adventure. And we talk about how you can't do it all. You've got to choose the venues or the events or the shows that are important to you, and let go of the rest. But also to respect that everybody has their own adventure that they're on in agility. And we don't have to take away from anybody. So I think that kind of feeds into this idea of there's no set in stone. You're not signing a contract with an organization saying that you will only show there. And I would concentrate, when we're talking about debut, I would concentrate on making it a great experience for your dog and not really worry too much about what venue it's in. I think in the grand scheme of things, if you get 2 Qs in USDA and then you go to AKC and you may feel like, well, I could have been 2/3 of the way to my novice title if I just started here. But in the grand scheme of things, that novice title is going to come, that open title is going to come, the master's title is going to come. You're going to get there. And those 2 trials didn't matter in terms of just getting that cue. They mattered as exposure for your dog.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get trapped into thinking that they have to do one organization, typically a little bit later in the dog's career when they get set on a path of, for example, I want to get qualified for AKC Nationals. And that might take 8 months of showing twice a month, I really got to be, hitting hard on AKC in order to do that. I don't want to take a weekend off to do UKI. I don't want to take a weekend off to do CPE. So I like to encourage people to try to dabble around a little bit in everything, maybe while the dog is younger, explore, try a CPE trial, try a UKI trial, try an AKC trial, kind of get a feel for everything, and then kind of decide what track that you want to go. And again, as you just said, you're not trapped into one. You're not locked into one. I think it's kind of the hunt for a larger goal that sometimes gets people feeling like they're trapped. And there's nothing wrong with pursuing a particular goal or pursuing a particular mission. It's just that sometimes those what could be lengthier goals are what get people feeling like they're trapped and sometimes afraid to try things a little bit different or try a new organization. So, take advantage of that. I know, for example, one of the factors is age. So AKC and CPE, you are allowed to show at 15 months. UKI, they have to be 18 months with the exception of speed stakes, and then USDA is 18 months. So if you want to kind of more seriously pursue USDA between that 15 and 18 months, if you feel the dog's prepared, go to an AKC show and do FEO. Go to a CPE show and do declared training in the ring. Get yourself some exposure to those, and you might find that you really enjoyed that experience with that organization.
Exactly. And I think that there are also going to be venues that are more or less favorable to you and your dog and your goals. So, as you become more experienced in agility, and if there are larger events that you want to do, like different national level events or even international level events, the organizations are, for the most part, gatekeepers to those events. I think that all of these organizations at this point do allow mixed breed dogs to compete. So you are not limited if you have a mixed breed dog. However, if you have a purebred dog, you are going to get additional recognition when you compete in AKC, which is a breed club. So, if you have a purebred dog and and you might enjoy being recognized as having the top dog in your breed. And that's a recognition you're not going to get in any of the other organizations because they don't really, keep track of breed in the same way that AKC does. The Invitational is an AKC event that really recognizes those different breeds. If you want to do Westminster, that is an AKC affiliated show and the requirements are AKC. I think another thing to look at, and this I think you can really just look at year to year, is the prerequisites for the major events, especially the national level events. So, for example, it takes a lot of showing to go to AKC Nationals, to get qualified for AKC Nationals. So if that's something you want to do, you're going to need to do a lot of AKC trials. In contrast, it takes fewer trials to go to USDAA Nationals. And oh, by the way, with AKC, all of those qualifications that you have to get to go to their nationals are at the master's level. So if you have a young dog with lots of skills, they have to get through novice, they have to get through open, they have to get through excellent before they're even beginning to accrue the prerequisites for AKC nationals. If you have a young, talented dog, they can go right into Grand Prix and steeplechase in USDA as soon as they're 18 months, and you could be going to your very first national level event with a 2-year-old dog, and that'd be much more difficult with AKC. And with UKI, their national event is an open event, so anybody can go, right?
That's right. You do not have to have any local qualifiers. You could just go and let your very first UKI show be the US Open. And I
I'm
think
not recommending that necessarily, right? But if you are a very, very experienced person with a very talented dog, then, or if you have titles, in AKC, but the UKI Open is in your backyard, then it's nice to know that you can do that.
Yeah, I'm an example of that. I'm not doing any local UKIs this year. I'm just kind of being very cautious with Swift at 7 years old to save his time on equipment for things that I need, or, using that day that would be spent all day at a show to maybe really dedicate 2 hours to some training. So I'm not doing any local UKI with him, but I do plan to go to the Open this fall. And the other thing with these kind of national events or the major events for me personally is I will choose based on, back to that top one, geography. So last year, USDAA Nationals was in Tennessee, so about a 6-hour drive from me, and I chose to go to their nationals. So I did their local events, I did their regional, and I went to their nationals. This year, their national event is in California. So I am not going to their national event, and for that reason, I am then not doing the local shows for USDA this year. So rumor has it, it's going to come back on the East Coast for 2021. I'll probably pick up USDAA again and start pursuing that. So sometimes your major events for the year are going to be back to that geography of not only which one do you find value in, but possibly rotating around based on proximity. So with AKC Nationals being in Georgia, that is one I'm going to go to. USA Nationals in California, I'm going to skip out on this year.
Exactly. And there's one kind of random factoid, I guess, that I wanted to make sure people know, because I think it has some interesting implications for how you juggle your showing and your different organizations. And that is that UKI does allow for a move into a high level of UKI based on your title in another major organization. So you could, if you already have your master's levels and titles in AKC, you can move right over into the higher level classes in UKI. The one gotcha about that is you do it at the time that you register with UKI. And so rather than when you get your new puppy, registering them with UKI right away, going over to AKC, and then wanting to move over to UKI and start at a higher level, you wouldn't be able to if you'd already registered. But if you just hold out, don't register, wait until you know that you want to do UKI, then you could skip some of those lower level courses and jump right in at a higher level course. So that is kind of a unique aspect of UKI, that lateral move from other organizations, but it does have that one little caveat that I wanted to let people know about. I think actually there's one other, I guess, factoid that I wanted to point out as well in terms of possibilities for how you debut your dog. I think this is less relevant now that we have FEO, where we can really go and give our dogs these great experiences and we can decide what obstacles we do. But before FEO was available, I would often debut in jumpers before standard. So my dog does not have contacts yet, but they do have all of the, they do have jumping, they do have handling. I would debut in jumpers. And AKC jumpers has weave poles. USDA starters jumpers did not. And so I could jump right into USDA starters jumpers with just jumps and tunnels, essentially, and get that ring experience. Again, I think that is less relevant now that we have FEO. I'd probably just use FEO to give my dog that same experience in the ring, doing only the obstacles that they're familiar with.
This is very similar to CPE. I'm not an expert on the rules, but I do know in CPE that there's 5 levels and you can start in level 3. Okay, so similar how you said you can kind of, depending on when you register, you can grandfather into higher levels for UKI. And CPE, you can start in level 3, and that does not depend on what titles you have in other organizations. But the advantages to level 1 and level 2 is less equipment. So when you talk about weave poles and teeter, those are going to be the equipment that you're not going to see guaranteed until level 3. So if I recall correctly, and again, I know I may not be right on this, but level 1 may in fact be no weaves, no teeter, or maybe weaves without the teeter. And then level 2, you add into it. And then by level 3, you do have the weaves and teeter. So you could go out in level 1 or 2, no weaves, no teeter, just have your A-frame dog walk and then slowly add the obstacles in. Or if you had a dog that was prepared for all of them, you could jump right into level 3.
Right. All right. So I hope that, I mean, basically the answer to the question is there is no right venue. And also it's not, the venue itself is not that important in terms of where you start. But I think that the rest of this podcast could help you decide where you want to put your focus, and maybe just for this year, maybe just for 2020, or maybe just for a particular nationals year. You may shift that focus from time to time, but don't ever feel stuck. I think that that's largely artificial, feeling like you're stuck in an organization. Really take a look at what your goals are, what you enjoy, and the kind of events that you want to go to with your dog. And that's going to give you the majority of the answer here.
Absolutely. There's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of factors to take into account for each individual team. So do what makes the most sense for you and your dog.
All right. And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, hitaboard.com, 1tdc.com, and also NTI Global. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com for the widest selection of dog agility tunnels for both competition and backyard training. Known for free shipping, more options, high-quality products, and low prices, NTI Global has got you covered. They also offer tamer and anchor weight bags, along with a full line of accessories and agility storage solutions. Need your agility gear in a hurry? Don't forget to check the in-stock selection. Visit shop.ntiglobal.com today. Happy training!